Hello and welcome to Sketchplanations the podcast, your audio feast of fun, facts and fascination with the world around us, inspired by the ever-growing collection of educational and informative sketches at sketchplanations.com. I'm engineer and broadcaster Rob Bell, and with me is designer and creator of Sketchplanations Jono Hey, entrepreneur and past winner of The Apprentice Tom Pellereau. And it's our absolute honour to welcome onto this episode a man who's been dubbed America's explainer-in-chief, David Macaulay, the brilliant mind who, through illustrations, curiosity and wit, has inspired generations of kids, and most likely a ton of adults too, to see the world through his inspiring and knowledgeable eyes. From springs to rotary pumps, from cathedrals to toilets, his work makes the complex not just understandable, but unforgettable. David, Tommy, Jono, hello.
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 David, thank you so much for agreeing to join us on the podcast.
My pleasure.
I don't know how much of Sketchplanations you've seen, but there is a very strong similarity of purpose in yours and Jono's work, a purpose which we very much love to explore and celebrate on this podcast. But that is explaining interesting stuff in a way that's hopefully easy to understand and captures others' hearts and minds and curiosity. Something you've been doing for a lifetime, David.
Yeah, it's learning about interesting stuff that sucked me in. I've been at it since, 72, with a degree in architecture, to sort of seed the process from the very beginning. That whole idea of being asked to solve problems of an architectural nature, obviously in an architectural school, and realizing just how much fun it was to sort of get inside stuff and translate it, interpret it, so that you could actually construct things from it that could be different potentially from anyone else's view.
Did you almost stumble into this, should we call it a career in explanations then?
Not almost. No, headlong. I spent my junior year, my third year of architecture school, in an architect's office, working, for those 2 or 3 months. And prior to that, in the middle of junior year, I discovered that I just didn't want to be an architect. I loved studying, and I can't emphasize that enough. It was an exciting place to be, an exciting activity. I wanted to do something that was more personal from the beginning. And I could not imagine myself designing a building on my own, do my stuff, whatever that was going to be. Yeah. And I didn't know what it was going to be. But I drew a lot. I made models a lot. I did well in school because I found a way of explaining my solution to the problems that we were given in these various assignments and made them my own.
I was thinking, we all did an engineering degree, and I felt like compared to many degrees at the university, engineers work quite hard. And I still remember that actually it was the architects were the only people who took their sleeping bags to the lectures because they were planning to be there all night.
We worked very hard. I mean, there's no question about it. I was exhausted by junior year. And maybe that was part of the rationale behind my reasoning. I don't want to do this. But I don't think so, because I've never regretted it for a moment. And I think back often at how that education allowed me to even enter the world of bookmaking and illustration and that sort of thing.
Well, your oeuvre of work, David, is vast, and I'm not sure I've even been able to capture it all in my research, but we're talking over 30 books, years of teaching, live appearances, exhibitions, lectures, multiple TV series, winner of way too many awards to mention. But probably your most famous book, The Way Things Work, has been enjoyed. There it is. Tommy's got it. Has been enjoyed for almost 40 years by kids all over the world, with, I've read, an estimated sales of over 3 million. It doesn't really matter. It's very, very big, right?
They make it up. They make those numbers up.
That's fine.
I have no idea. Honestly.
Let them keep making it up, David. As long as it keeps going up, right?
Yeah. As long as it stays in print. I mean, that's the thing.
If we take that book specifically, David, or maybe in your books generally, in all of your work, where do you feel the joy lies? What do you personally get out of it?
The opportunity to learn stuff I had no idea about. That's at the bottom of it. That's at the heart of this whole process. I love to learn. I am a student. I've been a teacher for many years, but I've been a student even longer. I worked on The Way Things Work with a guy named Neil Ardley, a composer, a brilliant sort of science writer, and a man who knew everything in The Way Things Work. He knew it. And if he didn't know it, he knew where to find it. He became my teacher for 3 or 4 year period. He was the guy, not me. He was the guy who sort of put together the structure of the book. And I was asked if I would be willing to illustrate a book about machines. And I said, how long is it? He said, 400 pages. And I thought, you got to be kidding. I didn't say that out loud, but in my head. So I declined working on something so vast about machines as part of a team. I always worked on my own stuff. And I was reluctant to give that up. I was a little afraid to give that up. But he asked me again a year later. Once again, we were having dinner. Always a dangerous time to be asked those kinds of questions. And I said, okay, sure, let's do this. And obviously, I'm very grateful I succumbed the second time around because it has, it changed everything in my life, really. And was this remarkable opportunity to have him guide me through this information so that I could create the most accurate drawings possible. Then it was up to me to make them playful, to make them fun, to make them entertainment, as well as information. And that's something that I've been trying to do in all the books I do, even the picture books. There needs to be some information, there needs to be some substance, but there also needs to be some entertainment. And that's the thing that keeps me going. There's always new stuff to talk about.
Well, there is always new stuff to talk about, which has played out in the books that have followed on, the new way things work, the way things work now. I wonder what the next one will be.
It's interesting. People have asked me, and I'm supposed to be working on a book now about the Earth. And the model for this book is to be the way things work. It's supposed to be 400 pages. A few years ago when I thought, well, that sounds like a fine idea, I said, okay, yeah, let's just put it on hold, but let's do that. And I've come to realize that it would be such a waste of time because the information that you need to know how the Earth works is already available. And it keeps changing. That was not true in 1988 when it came to machines.
Yes.
So you couldn't go online, first of all. So my job was made that much easier because there wasn't anything quite like what we were doing. So I'm working my way around it. I'm trying to give them what they want without giving them what they asked for. So we'll see how that goes.
Jono, does what David say there about what he enjoys, the joy he gets out from learning, does that resonate with what you do in Sketchplanation? It's a loaded question because I know the answer.
Yeah, it was a really interesting way to frame it for me, actually, because I did wonder when I read The Way Things Work so long ago, I thought, how does he know all this stuff? Because there's so much in there. So it's nice to sort of realize that you were learning at the same time as you were drawing these things. I remember doing a sort of one of those personality assessments, and learner was absolutely at the top of mine. And so every time I sort of take on a new sketch, usually it's something I kind of think I know, but then when I start to think, how am I going to explain this? I realize I don't really know it and I have to go learn it. But on the other hand, if you can make a living by learning stuff and drawing it out for people, that's brilliant. Well,
if you can make a living by teaching, the process is so rich and such a give and take experience. So I'm a student first and foremost, a teacher secondarily. And if you go into a class and you're not a student also in spirit, then you probably shouldn't be there.
That's a nice way of putting it.
David, I think I heard you say once, encouraging people to open their eyes to the ordinary. And I guess that's the start in asking questions. I was going to ask briefly what role you feel drawing plays in this, because you can just walk down the street and look at stuff and start asking questions, right? But for you, when you sit down with a pencil and paper, does it change it compared to just wandering along asking those questions?
Well, I think it encourages you to really look at, and to go beyond looking and actually see what's in front of you. If you have to sketch it, if you've just got an impression of it, or if you've just taken a picture of it, you may or may not remember anything about it. But if you've tried to sketch it, you've had to walk around it. You've had to look at the back as well as the front, look at it from the top, whatever it is. And you wouldn't be doing those things if you weren't trying to sketch it, because the fact is you can't see it all at once. You can't because other questions come up. We had a bird's nest built last year in the umbrella over the table on the patio in the back of the house. These two robins set up shop I couldn't believe this grass hanging from the arms of the umbrella. And I thought, where did that come from? And I realized they've been at work. I had no idea. But that was such an invitation to watch a process up close and personal, like maybe too personal for the robins. But I worked really hard to maintain my distance. But just my admiration for what those two creatures did, and then raised two little guys, and they're all gone. I just opened the umbrella a couple of days ago, hoping that the robins will come back and show me how they built the nest, because I missed the building of it. It was there. Yeah. And I know they're not flown in, mass produced from some bird central. I'm hoping that they'll come back this summer and do it again. But I took the nest out when the birds had gone and the little guys were gone and all that sort of stuff. And I waited a respectable amount of time just in case they were going to come back and do it again. But, and I took the nest off, peeled it off the umbrella, and I cut it in half as carefully as I could so that I could see a clean cross section of the shape of the inside of the nest and the body of the bird, basically shaping that form for the eggs and so on. It is just such a beautiful piece of architecture, beautiful piece of engineering, beautiful piece of sculpture. It's just extraordinary.
And what you've described there is a curious mind that needs to know the answers to that.
To say the least. Yeah, curious. Curious is a very nice way of putting it.
It's a good word, isn't it?
This man is nuts. But it was such a gift. It was such a gift in terms of the Earth book and so on. What could be more compelling than a structure built as a home, a temporary home for bringing up youngsters, made of grass and some sticks and some mud and so on and so forth. And it's solid as can be. And it's also just as solid as it needs to be and no more. It's just a brilliant, brilliant thing. And, I think, how about that last sketch you did, Macaulay? That wasn't so great. You kind of rushed it. And perspective is really crappy on it. What happened? And if I can get the students that I get to work with to just do that, to open their eyes and really notice how much wonderful stuff there is to take in. And as I said, it doesn't cost anything. Just do it. And the sketching is a way of encouraging that process. You do have to really look hard at things if you're going to sketch them in a meaningful way. I don't mean rendering. I mean just capturing the essence of this thing. And to figure out what that means, you have to ask questions about them.
David, I'm pretty sure we got the very first edition of your book. And I remember I was at school in the US, in New York State, elementary, the top year of the elementary, and we had to do the school science project. And that's the sort of one where everybody makes the volcano and the chemical reaction to spill out the top. And I made, and it's still in the book now, the current editions, you have an explanation of how a burglar alarm works, which is where you have a circuit which is with a movable lever which is held together close to the window by a magnet in the window, and that keeps the circuit closed. And as you move the window away, that lever springs back, opens the circuit, and the alarm goes off. And that was what I made for my science project, absolutely based out of your book. It was a bit of a flimsy cardboard model, I'm afraid.
You're welcome, though. You're welcome. If Neil was with us, he'd be very pleased to hear that.
He wouldn't be pleased to hear that one of the volcanoes won.
Well, you have to be open-minded about these things.
Well, listen, for this podcast series, David, we usually pick one of Jono's sketches to focus on and broaden our conversation out from there. And with you as our guest this time, as someone who's explained a lot of the physical and engineering world in your celebrated illustrations, I thought we should start with a physical item, a physical mechanism. Mm-hmm. I thought we'd go with canal locks, this big physical engineering mechanism. So that's the sketch that's depicted as the artwork for this episode. But, dear listeners, if you'd like to see the sketch in more detail, you should head to sketchplanations.com. I'm not sure you've ever illustrated a canal lock in your books, have you, David? I may be wrong.
No.
Not yet.
There
can't be many things to say that for. I would have thought.
Well, when I thought that this is what was going to happen, I thought, well, it's interesting because I've never done it. So I will be learning about it.
Well, good.
Along with everyone else.
Well, Jono, shall we stick to what is probably our only regular feature and ask you to talk about your lock gates sketch? What prompted you to do this one?
It's actually one I'd thought about for a long time because I find it kind of magical, this idea that a boat can go uphill.
Yeah.
How does a boat go up? And so lock gates are the solution. And not too long ago, we went on a canal boat trip because my dad loves, I guess, relics from the Industrial Revolution, which are scattered all over the UK.
Don't we all?
Talking to Rob Bell here.
Yeah. Indeed. And so we went on there and we had people explaining them. And a bit like David's been saying, it's sort of, I knew roughly how they worked. But actually I needed to really know how they worked. And so that's what made me want to sketch it. And so it's one of these ones where I felt like I couldn't do it all in one picture.
Yeah, interesting.
And I did try, and I did think about that. You can have a boat at different phases, or you can have even two canals side by side and boats in different steps along one, and you'd perhaps do it all in one. But I felt like actually there were enough pieces to this, which are really important, that it needed a process. So the sketch is kind of the 4 levels of a boat approaching a lock, opening the sluice so the water gets to the level of the boat. That allows you to open the gate. You can get the boat in, you shut the lock, then you shut that sluice and you open the one in front of you and let water in so that the boat rises up. Then you can open the gate in front and go out. And so those are the four steps. And what I was trying to explain, this magic thing about a boat going uphill.
And when you say sluice, it's basically like a big tap. You let water pass through the gate without opening the gate.
You open a hole.
Yeah.
So that, and because you're not at the bottom of the canal, hopefully. So what you're doing, you just wind something on top, and it's really just lifting a little door with a screw to pull it up and let the water through. And they're like so simple, and yet when I sat down to actually draw it, I realized there were a bunch of subtleties where I hadn't really realized. The gates in the back are different from the gates in the front, and the sluice and are different in the front and the back, and then one comes in the side and one's through the door. There's a little bump for specific reasons, and all sorts of things I figured out actually as I was drawing this wrongly, but I got there in the end.
You've said this before about your sketches, that a lot of the time doing a sketch on something, whatever it may be, helps cement in your own mind how things work. It's what David's been talking about here as well now, by sketching it, it means that you learn that and then you've got it. I mean, yes, if you forget it years down the line, fair enough, but you know where it is in your book. And was that the same with this, Jono, that, by drawing this now, yes, I've got it. You know how they work.
Well, yeah, and I didn't realize, for example, that the doors that you open are different at the front than the back. And it's completely obvious now that I've drawn this.
Right,
they're
okay.
not, like, one's half length and one's full length. Neither did I realize, when you're opening the gate to let the water through, one of them goes straight through the middle of the gate. But if you have a boat in a lock, it's not a great idea to sort of be pouring water straight at the deck of the boat. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's buried. It goes down around the side of the lock and comes in and up at the side. And so little subtleties like that, even though people had told me, even though we'd operated some locks, I was still figuring out as I was drawing. I was like, that's why that is there. I didn't realize that. But yeah, I think I have it now. And actually there are all sorts of extra additions, and you can have ones, for example, you can have a side pool, which makes it use half as much water, which is really clever. So you drain off half the water into the side pool, and you can use that water next time for the next boat.
I know that the new locks at the Panama Canal use such a design.
I looked at the sequence of sketches and I thought, okay, that makes it really clear. This trade-off in water height. I mean, it's so logical. And that's the great thing about this. The best stuff is just logical. It's almost common sense, but you have to think of the questions to start with. You have to, good design doesn't come from bad problems. It comes from creating good problems and analyzing those problems until you get to a point where you can respond to it in a way that's, meaningful and, with any luck at all, successful. So the one thing that I missed in the sketches, because they're cross sections, was the way the doors work. three-dimensionally.
Yes.
I mean, you talk about them. You have to go to the words for that. So, and I say that like it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have to go to the words. To me, the part of the joy of bookmaking is that you are trying to create this interwoven fabric of visual images and verbal images. And you are inviting somebody into a drawing, and they will be pulled into the point where they have a question that the drawing doesn't answer. That's when you go to the words. Or if you're a more verbal person, you'll start with the words, and there will be things that seem a little complicated. And theoretically, you should be able to move right into the visual material. And together, those two things create a full picture of the questions that the images encouraged. I think my job is to encourage questioning, not to provide answers.
I mean, you're absolutely right that I feel like if I'd have made it a nice spread in your book, I would have had a beautiful bird's eye shot of a canal at an angle with the whole thing going on and all the scene and a boat coming up and a boat coming down and people doing it, and probably a mammoth pulling one along. They used to be pulled by horses, I think. And it's interesting you say about the words, because I mean, sometimes I think that when I'm trying to explain things, I'm trying to be as conservative with words as I can be. And yet, if you look at them compared to a normal drawing, they're full of words. But I guess when you look at the sort of a page of, the way things work, or many ones in your books, it really is. It's that mix of there's a drawing, there's captions, there's labels. Sometimes you can just look at the drawing and get what's going on with the arrows and things. And other times you want to go to this bit of text here, or your eye's drawn up here, and then you read this bit of text that explains that, or you have a box. It's like the whole picture that people are, I don't know, you open a page and you're like, where do people start? Where do people go? Where are you drawn to? And maybe that's the questions people start asking.
You weave them together really well. And it was fun to read what you said. You're always playing with it. And the illustrations, easily accessible. And the fact is that you've created a kind of structure for this book where you use this device. And it reminds me of the 1960-something edition that came out in Germany of The Way Things Were.
Right. Okay.
And it's this thick, 2 inches thick, 3. It was a 2-volume set. They were all cross sections, but not playful cross sections. Oh, they were killer cross sections, as one might expect from German engineers. But yet it sold incredibly well because people want to know. And if they don't really know, they want to know they have the answers somewhere on a shelf, like me. So, it's like it's a tradition. And to me, you're continuing that tradition, but not in the German way. There's play. There's a really light touch and really solid art to go with it. But, enough about you.
I have really enjoyed watching Jono's face as his work has been appraised by America's explainer-in-chief. That was marvellous.
He's going to ask if he can put that on the front of the book for the next edition.
I don't know where explainer-in-chief came from. I don't remember. It makes me uncomfortable because give me some questions, give me a pad, give me a pencil, and together we will figure out the answer to the questions.
That's lovely, yes.
Or we'll redefine the questions so that we have a better chance of coming up with an answer.
That's how I love to problem solve and to learn as well, is doing it with somebody else where the question that you're trying to answer does change as you think it through and as you get that opportunity to think aloud. Well, that's what works for me.
Yeah.
Maybe your sketches, David, if there isn't a physical person there with you, are your sketches another means for you thinking aloud?
They are why I sketch. I sketch to understand what it is I'm trying to say, what I'm looking for. I'm teaching a class now at Dartmouth. It's called The Way Things Work, A Visual Introduction to Engineering. It has very little to do with engineering. If anybody at Dartmouth or at the publishers in New York is listening to this podcast, I was kidding. We give the students each get a sketchbook. Many of them have never had a sketchbook. Give them a sketchbook, 2 pencils, an eraser, and a small pencil sharpener. So there are no excuses. But it's the whole process of being encouraged to ask questions, to be curious. If my books do anything for younger readers, for instance, I hope it is that they encourage curiosity. I won't pretend to offer all the answers. I will pretend to want to encourage curiosity above all else.
Can I ask something? I've read a brilliant quote of yours as to why the Mammoths are part of there. And your answer was about the fact that you said, to help people learn, the best way is to put a smile on their face first.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering if that was something you were told, if that was something that you saw from an early age that helped, or where did that, because that's an incredible observation in itself.
As someone who grew up in England, I have a British sense of humor. And I got that from my parents. I got that from my father particularly, although they both had it. So looking for humor, being playful when possible. And when I started to making books, after the first few books, I began to realize that if you opened the book and it looked like it was going to be hard work, you'd already kind of done yourself a disservice, never mind the material. So how do you make it? You don't want to undermine the information because these are supposed to be information books. But that requires carefully thought through humor. Sometimes it starts just spontaneously. But the idea is that you're always looking to say, relax. This is not rocket science, even though there may be some rocket science in this. This is going to be stuff that you can, in fact, understand if you give it a little time, if you ask some questions, if you look beyond the surface. It's all there for you. And if you don't get it, there are people you can ask. There are places you can go.
David, I think one of the things I really like about the humor that you use in the books and the scenarios that maybe there's little people in the toaster watching the toast go down. It's a giant piece of toast, and it helps you put yourself in there. But also I think the humor sort of tells you that natural curiosity, that learning doesn't have to be just work. We can all learn, and it's fun and it's interesting. I've realized over many years that I've stolen so much I've learned from you about how do you take something and not make it like a dry textbook, but make people want to learn this thing. I mean, I was looking through some of the books we have. We have the old maths book as well. And actually, I did a sketch on parts of a circle, which is, like the radius and the diameter and that kind of thing. And I noticed you did one as well, and it's way better than mine, but it's a Ferris wheel, and there's lots of like rats in the Ferris wheel, and obviously all of the things are labeled on the picture, and here I am learning about a circle, but it's such a much more approachable, interesting way of learning. And I think that's what I really like about the humor. It makes it not seem like work, it just makes it seem like fun.
But you come at the problem from the right point of view, which is you're enjoying this. You've enjoyed learning whatever it is you want to learn, and it's natural to want to share that. The fact that you've enjoyed learning it means that you've had that smile on your face. And that's the sense of satisfaction that you want to communicate. I think it sounds to me like it's just natural for you. I think it's natural for me. I don't know how to do it without. And I consider myself so really lucky to be able to do this because it makes me happy.
David, even you talking about it now, I can feel how happy it makes you, which in turn makes me very happy. I mean, I absolutely love the wit and humour in your work. Jono, I love the wit and humour in your work. And whenever I see it, I hope I always point it out to you because I do enjoy it so much. I'm very comfortable in that environment. If something makes me giggle, even if it's nothing to do with the explanation, it's just a little character looking on, I absolutely love it. It makes me want to see more.
Those are the rewards to the reader, a young or old, who comes back a second time or a third time or a fourth time, and they think they've seen it all, but they haven't seen it all.
Because they missed the guy.
There's something waiting, there's some little thing waiting. And I think that's, I think it's natural for us to want to do that. You don't expect to communicate on the first reading everything that this illustration is about, or these words are about, or this spread is about. You have to, it has to be rich enough and deep enough and subtle enough in some cases to reward those return trips.
So that's some of the more subtle humour. But for any listeners who haven't seen any of David's work, and I will include lots of links, and I urge you to look it up as you're listening to this. Woolly mammoths they're a recurring theme within the explanations, and they're not so subtle. They are there, but it's lovely, and it makes you think, oh, what are they going to be up to on the next page? Why woolly mammoths, David? What was it about woolly mammoths that you thought, yeah, this is going to do the job for me?
I was trying to figure out how to explain levers and simple machines, basically. I'd made all these diagrams where the pages were kind of neatly organized, and there's a first class lever and a second and a third and so on and so forth. And it's all been done. It had all been done that way many times. And here I was trying to draw it a little differently or something. And I was just about ready to shoot myself. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. Levers and ramps and things have been around for a long time. I think we can assume that is true. And so what does that mean? Like cave people? All right, cave people. Let's give cave people some rocks, a big rock for a fulcrum, and a log, and they could play on the log. In fact, they could weigh each other. But in the background of one of the sketches, really early on, I drew some trees and a head of a mammoth sticking out between the trees, and maybe a saber-toothed tiger, whatever. I just scribbled it in and thinking, okay, I need to create this environment here. And when I looked at that drawing and saw those people, I thought, wait a minute, they could weigh the mammoth. So to answer the question, the mammoth came out of the woods in the background. And once that started to click, then I realized, wait a minute, these guys could do all sorts of things.
Almost 40 years on from that book first being published, David, do you still get feedback that almost universally people have this curiosity and love for your woolly mammoths?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The mammoth is a star.
Yeah. Tommy, you design products, and with those products, often, I'm sure probably actually with every product, there's an instruction manual that comes with it. And I'm assuming within that you have diagrams, how to explain how to use this. You ever consider using wit and humour within that, woolly mammoths?
I have not, and I think I need to rethink that. We work in the beauty quite close to the kind of medical sector, so we have to be a little bit careful, but I think there is more scope for humour. And certainly my kids love anything that's funny, and I know that converts so well with them.
It's tricky, isn't it? Balancing, walking that line, because you don't want to undermine, the importance of the information or the accuracy. It requires a really gentle hand. That is not the mammoth. The mammoth is not sort of a gentle hand. I think humor is really incredibly important, especially about learning things, being introduced to things that you may not have thought about or that might seem frightening at first. That might seem intimidating. You just have to touch on the human side of it to sort of break that initial barrier, to break the ice in a way.
It'd be nice to see it in architecture sketch. I literally have never seen like an architecture sketch for a building with like some funny thing going on. Some people playing on the wall or something like that. No, they're always walking hand in hand with the coffee.
Do you know Great Moments in Architecture?
No.
Okay, that's a book from 1977. And I made a series of fake classical plates, Piranesi kinds of plates. One example, an upside-down drawing of l'Arc de Triomphe called the Arch of Defeat. And it is, the legs are kind of drooping outward as it just ups, but it's drawn pen and ink, carefully, the details and so on and so forth. I'm not Piranesi, but I mimicked Piranesi, the trees and the clouds, and it has a kind of grandeur to it, but the absurd title. So I have played with architecture just in that.
That's fun.
That was going on vacation, actually.
One of the things I found with Sketchplanations is probably some of the more popular ones are more abstract concepts like models and frameworks and things like that, because, I don't know, there must be thousands of people who've drawn diagrams of explaining canal locks. As you said, there probably didn't need to be a new one, except that I found it fascinating, and maybe people who I'm sending these to have not looked in depth at canal locks, but there are already loads of those. But there are not always lots of diagrams or visuals for more abstract things. And I was wondering if you've tackled more abstract concepts, or you tend to stay in the physical realm.
Well, I haven't run out of stuff yet in the physical realm. and somehow I'm not sure I will. But I think what you're describing is so important. I mean, the stuff that is impossible to visualize for most people, they need help to visualize it. So if you're doing that, I think that's terrific. Old drawings, comic book things put out for school kids by the local electric company, and the electrons are all wearing sneakers and they're running along this, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Now, I'm not a big fan of the sneakered electrons, but the fact is, making electricity come to life for people. I mean, how do you do it? And maybe that's the best way. I don't really know. Otherwise, it's abstract shapes and so on and so forth. I mean, that's where some humor, some wit, some real invention is required, and some real imagination, because that stuff does not explain itself.
Yeah.
David, I absolutely share your passion with trying to encourage people to sketch. And my wife, who's a structural engineer and an architect as well, she says she's finding it quite tricky with the younger graduates who come through because they don't really want to sketch. They just want to start with the computer. They want to start by creating the CAD rather than just doing, okay, what's the 2D model kind of say, let's just sketch it. Where are the forces? But a lot of people, I think, might say that, but I can't draw. So I suppose I have two questions. Firstly, when you draw, do you already see it on the paper, as it were, and you are kind of almost following an outline that your brain has already put on the paper? And then the second part is, I believe everyone can draw. It's just a case of practicing, really. Like the more you draw, the better you get at it. So how do you kind of encourage people to start, or hints and tips?
The first one about what I sort of see when I sit down to sketch. I don't have a view in mind. I don't have an image in mind. I have questions in mind, and my hand has to keep moving until things start to connect, until I begin to see possibilities. It's the way the Mammoth grew out of nothing to become the star of the way things work. I mean, I wasn't trying to do mammoths. And it's true, whatever I'm drawing, I have a vague sense of what I need to explain. The more I work at it, the more questions I have. So they are pulled out of me by the sketching process. But the other thing about encouraging people, I hear that all the time. I can't draw. I'm terrible at this, and so on and so forth. And basically, they've never tried. What they tried at some point, they held a pencil or a pen or a ballpoint pen or a crayon or something like that, and it didn't turn out like they wanted. So, maybe this is not. I'll do something else. I'll play sports. Maybe I'll write. The creative process requires some real discipline and repetition, and it's boring at times to do some of this stuff. It's very boring. And so I just say, no, you can do it. I'm going to show you how. And so, in class, sometimes I will draw for them, but they will draw along with me. So in their sketchbooks, they're literally making the lines I'm making. And then we could talk about it. So
amazing.
I make them curious and show them that there are answers to these things. And in the drawing class, in the sketching class, it's a lot of encouragement. And I see a lot of like sloppy stuff, but it's sloppy stuff. It's not necessarily an indication of a lack of ability. I just hope that from the experience I'm having with the students now, that this notion of sketching, you don't have to have a book because that's a little bit intimidating, a sketchbook. But, you can scribble on anything, and it should be a response to something that you suddenly realize you don't know. But it would be fun to know.
Have you tried using AI for generating images?
Mm-mm.
Jono, that was a disgusting question. No. How dare you? How dare you?
I haven't. I keep seeing it when I look things up and I see the little AI introduction. Anyway, I haven't, and I can see it's creeping in. And I have friends who are beginning to use it in their work.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm very conscious of their time. So I am going to do my best to try and bring this round. Jono, Tommy, do you have any quick burning questions you'd like to ask? Or indeed, David, if there's anything you'd like to ask of us that you haven't yet.
David, you mentioned 2 pencils, a rubber and a pencil sharpener. What type of pencils, as in 3H, 3B? What type? Is it HB?
This is an HB, yeah.
Do you just use normal HBs?
Yep.
Brilliant. I love that answer.
And tracing paper is so great because it's so forgiving and it's so cheap. It's a perfect combination, forgiving and cheap.
That's a great tip. Jono, anything you'd like to ask David?
My question, which maybe it's for you guys as well, was because I said we're going to speak with David. Have we got any questions that you would ask? And one of them was, what's something fairly everyday that you just can't get your head around how it works, or that's just still remarkable to you?
Oh, God. It doesn't have to be, to me, the refrigerator.
Yeah, good one. Yeah.
Just that whole process of suddenly, it's hot, it's cold, and it works. So somebody had to, over time, realize that, getting ice delivered was just not going to get us very far. It's that sort of stuff. I mean, the computer, obviously, it's too much. Radio waves, I just don't understand it. So I tried to draw it, and I find myself making the same sort of radiating lines and waves and stuff like that. But I don't believe it because
can't see it.
I guess it works. Okay. I can't see it, but I make the same drawings because I know that this is a language people will understand. Oh, that's radio waves. What is that? Radio waves? It's like
That's just how the BBC first advertised it, wasn't it? With the kind of things coming out. So that must be how it works.
That's how it
works. Yeah.
It's very funny you mentioned the fridge, David. And again, this is another insight to my world. I got myself into a kind of fantasy panic the other day, imagining that somebody was about to ask me how a fridge works. I know how a fridge works. You know, it's a heat engine, but I got myself into a panic there and then going, I don't think I could do it justice now without actually sitting down and thinking this out and sketching out what I was going to say. Yeah. No one was asking me that question. I just got myself into that panic for no reason.
How a fridge works.
Yeah, but
it was.
It's good to be ready, though. I mean, be prepared.
You're right. And if I've learned anything from my dad as a scout leader, it's always be prepared.
Absolutely.
David, have you got any projects underway at the moment that we should be aware of, that something that we should be looking out for in the future?
I love to teach. I really do. And it keeps me on my toes. It's a challenge every day, but in a good way. And I just want to open their eyes to stuff before they leave. And I want them to realize that there's so much more than whatever happens at Dartmouth. My central belief is that you're not here to pick up information. You're here to learn how to observe, to see, to ask questions, and to begin to develop an appreciation for that act, and relax, because it will be rewarding.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
David, listen, thank you once again for giving up your time to come and speak with us. As a trio, I know that we were all fans of your books from a very early age. We all went on to study and develop a fascination for science and engineering, and we continue to be fans to this day. So thank you so much. We're very, very grateful to you.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And thank you all for listening. If you didn't know any of David's work before, I urge you to check it out. And as always, I'll include links in the episode notes down below to help you discover it. And if you have kids of a certain age, I can guarantee you they will also love it. So until next time, oh my gosh, did you guys just see that? I think a woolly mammoth just walked past my third story window. Well, I guess in the wonderful world of David Macaulay, that's not impossible. Thanks for listening. Go well, stay well. Goodbye. All music on this podcast series is provided by the very talented Frank Cinelli. And you can find many more tracks at frankcinelli.com.